Today, what we're going to talk about is our review number 2. So, if you recall, on Monday, we completed a review, and on Monday, I'll show you what the review was that we completed. So, we looked at the definition of a budget, but we also looked about what budgeting our money really means. We also looked about the definition of an expense, and we looked at why it's important to make a budget that you follow every month and how we determine which expenses get included in our monthly budget. Okay, so we looked at these 5 questions on Monday, and you should still have this study guide. Make sure you review these 5 questions and the 5 answers in order to be prepared for the test at the end of the week. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we are going to do the second part of our review. And the first question says, how do you decide how much to budget for each expense? And the second question says, why is it important to stick to a budget and not overspend? The third question says, what should you do if you overspend and run out of money? The fourth question says, what is the entertainment fund used for? The fifth question says, what is the emergency fund used for? And the last question, number 6, what are the pros and cons of having a roommate? Okay, so these are all questions that I have determined that are important for you to know. So each of these questions will be on the exam on Friday, and there is an activity after you finish this particular video that I will want you to use these questions and answers to help you answer the questions on the Blackboard assignment. So let's go ahead and get started. Number 1. Let's see here. How do you decide how much to budget for each expense? This question is asking you, how do you determine what you're going to budget? That's very important, guys. You want to make sure that you budget the right amount of money. Hang on just a second, guys. It looks like my iPad is acting crazy today. There we go. It reappeared. Let me just get this together. Okay, there we go. So how are we going to decide how much we're going to budget for each expense? Sorry guys, my iPad is just acting up today. Okay, I think I've got it together now. All right. So basically remember that a budget, and this is just for your notes, guys. A budget includes all your expenses. Okay. A budget includes every expense that you have. All right. And remember that an expense is a bill that you have. Okay, so a budget includes every expense that you have, and your expenses are the bills that you have. So expenses make your budget. All right, so this is just a review from the first review that we did. You have a budget, and then you have expenses that make up the budget. Your expenses are things like rent, power, gas, if you have a gas stove or a gas hot water heater. And you're going to have a car note if you choose to have a car, insurance for the car, gasoline for the car, because you have to have gas to make the car go. You're also going to have groceries, because you have to eat every single month. All right? It's important, guys, that you budget enough for groceries. You're also going to have the emergency fund. And remember that the emergency fund is only used in the event of an emergency. So that fund is used if you get a flat tire, or if you run out of money for groceries. If you have a roommate and they don't pay their part of the rent, that's where that money comes from. Emergency should only be used in the event of an emergency. It's not for going out to eat. It's not for buying new shoes or new clothes. It's for emergencies only. And the next one would be the entertainment fund. Okay? The entertainment, it's like I ran out of space there. The entertainment is for going out to the movies, going out to eat, going to the club with your friends, buying clothes, buying shoes, whatever it is that you want to buy on a monthly basis. That's what that fund is for. And remember that we also have, I think I forgot to mention it in the last video, but we also have the household expenses, all right? Household expenses are things like shampoo, conditioner, laundry soap, dish soap, soap, toothpaste, deodorant. That's what the household expense is for. So you have to make sure you budget money for those personal hygiene items that you're going to need every single month. And if you're smart, you can get most of those items from the dollar store, which makes it very cheap and cost efficient for you. Okay? So those are the expenses that we would have. Remember that we said we have the budget and we have the expenses. Okay? And you don't have to write this information down yet. This was just for a quick review. All right? We have budget and expenses. Now, what you do need to write down is that you decide how to budget for each expense by adding up all of your expenses. Actually, I think a better answer would be by listing or by writing down. That's a better way to put it. By writing down each expense that you have and how much each expense costs. Okay, so the question is, how do you decide how much to budget for each expense? And the answer to that, guys, is that you want to write down how much each expense costs. So that's how you decide how much you have to allocate for it, because you're going to decide how much it costs. So for example, if you have the expense which is called rent, which we all have to pay rent or mortgage, you have to have somewhere to live, and rent costs $300 a month because you have a roommate, then that's how much goes into your budget for rent, $300, the amount that it costs. But remember, the rent is not really $300 if you have a roommate, it's a double because you're splitting it in half. So really the rent is $600, okay? But you're dividing that by 2 people, which means you're splitting it in half, and each person pays $300, okay? So the rent is, your part is $300, but really it's $600, because if your roommate doesn't have his or her half of the rent for the month, then you have to cover both of your parts of the rent, or you're both going to get put on the street. Okay? It's really important that you understand that just because you have an agreement to pay $300 doesn't mean that you're not responsible for the entire amount of the rent in the event your roommate doesn't have the money. So that's something to consider when you have a roommate. Okay, number 2, why is it important to stick to your budget and not overspend? Well, this is a very simple question, guys. It is important to stick to the budget because you want to make sure that you have enough money. Hang on, guys, I got off track. Have enough money for all of your expenses every month. Okay? So budgets help us stick to it. Okay? Budgets lay it out for us. It makes it very clear that this is how much the rent costs, this is how much the car costs, this is how much groceries cost, and it helps us have a plan for the month. Okay? Because if you plan something, you're in a much better position and situation to come out on top. Versus if you just kind of spend whatever you want, then you might not have enough for all the things that you need. A lot of people, guys, remember that there are differences between what we need and what we want. Okay? A lot of people spend more money on what they want versus what they need. Okay? What you want and what you need are different. Okay? So let me give you some examples. So again, our needs are, we need basic clothing. Okay? It doesn't have to be Polo. It doesn't have to be Sean John. It doesn't have to be Lacoste. It doesn't have to be the best. But it can be just basic. They can come from Walmart. They can come from the thrift store. You can get creative when you're buying clothes. It's up to you to determine where the clothes come from. But remember, all you need is clothing. It doesn't have to be the best. You also need shelter. Okay, remember that shelter is the house that you live in, okay? The nice little house that you live in with the front door. Shelter includes the rent or the mortgage if you own the house. Most of you are going to pay rent. You also need food and water and power, okay? Those are the basic necessities that I think a person needs. The reason why I think you need power is because you need somewhere to make sure that you have air conditioning, to make sure that you have a stove to cook your food on, to make sure you have a refrigerator running that keeps all the food that you purchase with your budget cold or frozen. Otherwise, you're not going to have enough food because the food is going to spoil. So you need shelter, food, water, and clothing. And of course, you need water for personal hygiene, to take showers. You also need water for cooking, and you need water to drink to stay alive. So all of those are things that you need, okay? Now, things that you might want but don't need include things like a sports car. Okay, you might want a Mustang, but you certainly don't need it. You also might want expensive clothing such as polo, okay? But you don't need it. If you have enough money for it, great. But don't not pay the rent to have that expensive clothing. That's not a smart decision. You won't have a place to live very long. You also might want to go to Red Lobster for dinner. Okay, you don't need Red Lobster. All you need is food, but you want to go to Red Lobster. So there's a very distinct difference between wants and needs. Make sure you know the difference for our test on Friday. Okay, number 3. It says, what should you do if you overspend and run out of money? Okay, if you overspend, that means that either there was a bill that costed more, like let's say you budgeted, $100 for the power, but when the bill came in, it actually was $150. So you had to overspend more than what you budgeted by $50 because we said we would only spend $100, but the bill came in and we had to pay an extra $50. So guys, it's important that if you overspend, you make sure that you have enough money to pay all of your bills. And the way you do that is by pulling from your emergency fund, okay? Your emergency fund. That is what is very, very important. The emergency fund is where we pull money from if we overspend or if our roommate or someone else doesn't have the money to pay for something that they are supposed to have paid for. All right, moving right along. So if you run out of money or you overspend, as we've already said, you can pull money from the emergency fund. All right, because remember, the emergency fund is for emergencies, as I've already highlighted in orange on the left side of your screen over here. Emergency fund is for emergencies only. Okay. Number 4, what is the entertainment fund used for? All right, let's talk about the entertainment fund. So the entertainment fund is used for going to the movies, eating out, and shopping. All right. So the entertainment fund has a lot of different things that you could use it for. You can use it for anything you want. All right. But once it's gone, it's gone. So it is for going out to eat, shopping, maybe going on vacations, going to the movies, going to the club, and the list could go on forever. So entertainment is really used for whatever you want it to be for. Okay. The emergency fund, as we've pretty much talked about, is to be used in case of an emergency. Okay. Examples include going to the doctor, and you might need medicine because you went to the doctor. It could also be used if you run out of money. Could be used if you have a family emergency, like maybe your mom or dad need to borrow money, or your brother or sister, aunt or uncle, cousin, niece, nephew, whoever. All right. And the last question, what are the pros and cons of having a roommate? Let's think about that one. So I think maybe a couple of the pros, I'm just going to make a list. Pros, and then draw a little line, and cons. So there are definitely pros. Pros are the good things, and cons are the bad things. So some pros of having a roommate might be fun. Might be fun to have a roommate. You don't have to live by yourself. You're also going to meet more people. All right. Also, the biggest pro is that you're going to have less expenses, okay? Because your roommate is going to split the cost of those expenses with you. Some cons might be that they are noisy, they're nasty or dirty, they don't pay their bills. So you have to pay all the rent if they don't pay it. So those are some pros and some cons, and the list could go on. So what I want you to do is I want you to come up with some more pros and cons. I want you to write your paper like this, pros, and then I want you to have cons, okay? So you can copy some of the ones that I copied, but I want you to list 6 pros and 6 cons, okay? So make sure you list 6 of each, all right? So I've given you 3, so you have to come up with 6 or 3 more for each. So for pros, we said that they might be fun, you meet more people, and have less expenses. All right? And then I want you to come up with 3 more for pros. But for cons, we said that they might be noisy, nasty or dirty, and they might not pay their bills. All right, looks like I spelled noisy wrong. Let me fix that. There we go. So pros might be that they're fun, you get to meet new people, you have less expenses, and the cons are that they are noisy, nasty, or dirty, and don't pay their bills. And again, I want you to come up with 3 more pros, and I want you to come up with 3 more cons, because it's important that you also think for yourself. I want to help you as much as I can, but I also want you to come up with answers on your own. Okay, and now what I want you to do after you finish this sheet is I want you to go on to the Blackboard lesson that we talked about in class today. If you have any questions, let us know. Ms. Kerbo and I are going to grade this sheet after you finish it, so make sure that you've completed it in its entirety. All I'm asking you to do is copy the information down, okay?